Sarah.
This is Sarah G. Lato, a very unique character from the Amazing World of Gumball, which isn't saying much when you see their lineup of characters, but something about Sarah that makes her stand out is her obsessive, clingy nature she has towards Gumball and Darwin, the main characters. This reputation of being an obsessive fan has dubbed her the most hated character in all of the series. Okay, one of the most hated characters in all of the series. I wish to take a deep dive into Sarah's character, her personality, her issues, to showcase that she is more than just a crazed fan, but also to gain a better understanding of this lonely girl who was raised on television to cope through her dull, isolated life. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Luz Noceda of the Owl House matches the same characteristics as Sarah, a young, weird girl with little to no social skills who couldn't make friends at her old school, but through her journey found a community that loves and accepts her as she is. Luz is canonically neurodivergent, or at least has ADHD, from what viewers have noted, but that wasn't intentional. After doing her own research, it later became confirmed by the creator, Dana Terrace. People love Luz Noceda for the same reasons they hate Sarah Lato. A young girl with TV tropes and fictional brain rot that desires those types of close relationships in her own reality, but where Luz got to live her realistic reality version of her YA fantasy, Sarah had a realistic dark reality approach to this archetype. Having little to no friends, coming from a town where tropes were very real, and now she has to adjust to a new place with only her knowledge of media to help get her by. But where Luz is elsewhere on the neurodivergent spectrum, as the audience and some of her new friends find her behavior to be strange, quirky even, but also enduring and understands that she loves and cares for her newfound family, Sarah, however, as I see her, is the openly obsessive type that wishes to info dump on the closest thing that she can call a companion without any sense of awareness of basic boundaries. She can be unhinged and unnerving, which warrants the proper responses from her classmates, ignoring or even shunning her, which I would understand. Sarah has reached uncomfortable stalker levels when it comes to her interests and desires for friends, one of which has left a foul taste in everyone's mouth about her, but we're not there yet. And that's not to say Luz's depiction of a neurodivergent is any less valid for those who relate to her. I actually saw a lot of young me in Luz, but I also see it in Sarah as well. If anything, I understand Sarah as possibly being neurodivergent as well, based on her mannerisms, behavior, and pulling from my own autistic experiences growing up. Now, it's not confirmed that Sarah is neurodivergent or even on the spectrum, but there has been plenty of fan speculation, and even if it wasn't intentional, just like with Luz, that doesn't invalidate how I and possibly other neurodivergent AFABs could relate to her. You're welcome to disagree with me on it, but for the sake of this analysis, take Sarah possibly being neurodivergent, specifically autistic, with a grain of salt. Now, that doesn't excuse her behavior, but it would help put it into a better perspective under the guise of trying to understand her. Because she wasn't introduced until season 2 and just sat in the background, I'll be pulling from Sarah's central episodes for this analysis, starting with season 2, episode 31, The Voice. Her first speaking role, and it's when the boys go on an apology tour around the school to find the person that sent them a cryptic email. Up until this point, she's just been a part of the background cast and didn't do much. But I just wanted to note her first time speaking was when she had no impact on Gumball and Darwin, that they didn't even know her name. She was so upset that her head fell off. Oh, I know it's small compared to the other episodes where she plays a more active role, but my heart breaks every time at that scene. It's like Sarah knows she's just an NPC and doesn't bother approaching people. She's eating lunch on the bleachers by herself. How could y'all hold any hate in your heart for this lonely, lovely little lactose lady? Season 2, episode 36, The Sweaters, is Sarah's first major role in the show. Here it's established that she's a new kid who's getting a tour of the school by Gumball and Darwin, gassing them up about their hardcore adventures she's heard stories of, but the boys quickly dismiss it because they don't want to attract the wrong attention. But when some stock photo looking kids from Sarah's old school come to pick a fight, the boys actively don't want to partake in it. The coach comes to also tease the boys to get them to fight his hardcore students. The sweater kids threaten to have their parents bulldoze Elmore Junior High lie, and when the boys try to tell their teachers, they just also encourage them to fight. Gumball and Darwin just accept the match, thanks to Penny's interest in Gumball's ever so obsessive need to impress her. Turns out that it's a tennis match at the Sweater Kids' 1980s looking ass cardboard school, which explains why Sarah didn't fit in. And for the rest of the episode, they follow the story structure you'd expect from these type of plots. Rival school picks on the underdogs that showed their heart and win their enemies respect in the end, with a super mega happy freeze frame ending. During this episode, Sarah was keeping up with the predictable story beats of the classic and cliched movies and TV tropes to help Gumball and Darwin win. The school Sarah came from thrives on these old media cliches, which you'd think as someone as TV brain dead as she is, she would have thrived there. But she never fit in. Probably because everyone else looks and behaves the same, like stock cutouts. Making her the odd one out. Well, I don't know about y'all, but that's a similar feeling most neurodivergents get. Thinking that you're keeping up with the social surroundings of others just to be reminded that you're an outcast amongst your peers that blend into each other. Sarah seeks friendship, but the only way she understands how is through media cliches and tropes. But that doesn't always work out in the way she imagines in her head, which leads us to her second major appearance in Season 3, Episode 2, The Fan. Gumball and Darwin are running towards the school in a hurry, but everywhere they turn, there was Sarah. She wanted to stop by and say,
"It's nice to see you!"
It follows up with another cheesy sitcom wrap-up line and a tape recorder with a stock laugh track. She tries setting up episode plots for them to go on adventures with, but the boys would rather just have their lunch and chill. As the new kid, Sarah is trying to find her niche of where she fits in with the boys' dynamic, and they landed on her being the creepy, obsessive one. She then sings a very unsettling song about how she's always been watching Gumball and Darwin and hopes to marry one of them one day. Or, let's be honest, both of them. To the boys' measured response, they chase down Sarah to confront her about the creepy tape. She's so lost in the media sauce that she predicted when they'd show up, but turned around too soon. That is both hilarious and cute and a little creepy. As Sarah tries to show them her locker in an effort to explain her behavior and loneliness, Gumball makes her realize that there is no story and the boys want to be left alone. But after looking through her stuff and seeing the drawings of them, and how happy she felt how Gumball and Darwin that were the only students that made Sarah feel welcome, they finally understand that she just wanted to be included. They find Sarah's fanfic and decide to play the rest of it out as she's written it to make it up to her. Sarah, at her lowest, tells them that they don't have to do that. She's accepted her lonely fate. She's already driven them up a wall, and at this point, she doesn't want to further bother them with her weird antic. But the boys want to indulge her, and she happily plays along. Though they struggle to make sense of Sarah's cursive writing and terribly cliched story, the boys play their roles fairly straight, and it's hilariously kind of them. Sarah switching between tracks to set the mood, hamming it up for the dramatics. Aw, it's such dumb fun that they're having. The episode ends with Gumball destroying the fanfic and Sarah singing the outro, completing the episode. Now, in my opinion, this episode was a great introduction to Sarah, but also the start of her downfall in the eyes of most viewers, we will be discussing later. Sarah clearly lacks social grace and boundaries, working off of movie tropes and story beats to live her life, because in media, you'll always see those group of good friends that are always there for each other no matter what. That is what I believe Sarah desires, but due to her not fitting in back in her old school and having an even harder time adjusting to a school as bizarre as Elmore. However, as the show progresses, she will get there. The episode and the boys fully acknowledge that Sarah's stalking shouldn't be tolerated and that it was seriously uncomfortable. She was a lonely kid trying to adjust to a new school, so latching onto the first pair of kids that were ever nice to her also tracks for a young autistic person. According to ambitiousabouautism.org, one of the top reasons autistic people struggle with friendships is because people with autism may get easily attached to people, leading them to become over-friendly. It can be difficult to understand other people's perceptions of situations, therefore what they feel is appropriate may be considered as socially unacceptable. This misunderstanding can lead to a difficulty in establishing friendships. So as Sarah's friendship grows with Gumball and Darwin, so too does her understanding of socially appropriate behavior and boundaries. Granted, she's still a media brain rot goober, but by season 4, episode 13, the comic, is where she's at her absolute best, in my opinion. The school is acting even weirder than usual around Gumball, and it turns out it's because of Sarah's comic book about him called Laserheart. She illustrated the comic herself and wrote stories based on Gumball's mundane life, but clearly over-exaggerated them to add some flair, as any good storyteller would. While Darwin is being a little hater, like, seriously dude, let your brother get his superhero shine on, like, damn nigga, stop player hating. Gumball, as Laserheart, showcases justice around Elmore through his optimistic heart, but somehow makes things worse in the process. Sounds like an average day for Gumball if you ask me. But all in all, he's having a great time being Laserheart. Darwin keeps being a hater until Sarah mentions that he's also in the comic as the Smooch, Laserheart's sidekick. For the most part of the episode, Gumball is loving being the superhero Laserheart, and now that he's included, Darwin loves playing as the Smooch. Sarah's comic allowed them to help, in quotes, people and inspire justice. But when the kids are in the park late at night, they get mugged by a dark figure. Being unable to stop a real criminal and the possibility of their lives in danger, the boys quit heroics altogether. Later that night, Sarah stops by with the latest issue of Laserheart, but this time with the boys stopping the dark, mysterious figure with the power of optimism. It cheers them up and the mugger gets caught by Nicole. Brother was washed when deciding to strip her car. This is a severely underrated Sarah episode, in my opinion, because her media-obsessed brain actually made the boys happy for an adventure they could do together, and they had a good time in the episode instead of dreading being around her. Also, can we please talk about baby girl's art glow up? These were her drawings in the fan, and now she's publishing her own comic book that looks like this. Looks like she took those art classes after all, huh, Gumball? That How to Draw Superheroes book by Chuck Clevin really paid off. Who knew a baseball star knew so much about drawing superheroes? So not only did Sarah get an episode where the boys actually liked having her around, we also got to see a live comic book dub and edit of her latest issue. While also poking fun at the medium, they were parodying and leaving loads of comic book references. Now don't get me wrong, Sarah still has issues.
You're right. I got every issue.
But it was on a lighter side, and even her shipping was a lot more tame this time. And her brain rot will be of use again in season 5, episode 8, The Test. Sarah and the boys take an online quiz to see what kind of person they would be in a sitcom. Darwin got the lovable sidekick, anime fan obsessed with the loser for Sarah, and Gumball got the loser. But he isn't happy with that result, and in an effort to become more popular, he starts doing everything backwards, which goes as well as you think. Thankfully, Darwin suggests that he avoids saying his usual Gumball-isms, less unwarranted mean comments on others' appearance. While Gumball is being nicer and holding back his venom to become more popular, Tobias has fully replaced Gumball as the loser in the grand sitcom of their lives. Laugh track, muffled video audio, corny cliches and all. Sarah takes notice of all the changes and how Tobias is taking over Gumball's life, and while I'm on board with Sarah wanting to take him out for disturbing the continuity, Darwin would rather have Gumball go back to being his loser self. I love how not only Sarah took notice of these terrible sitcom tropes and plot holes, but also Darwin and tried to use them to convince Gumball how awful everything has become since Tobias became the loser. That walking rainbow cotton ball stealing penny was Gumball's tipping point to let out all of his venom onto Tobias, restoring order to their world of chaos. We have yet another slept-on Sarah episode where her weirdness and trope obsession was helpful to the plot and was hilarious poking fun at old sitcom tropes and cliches. It's at this point you notice the strong friendship she's built with Gumball and Darwin, and how they start looking out for each other, despite their flaws and quirks. Darwin recognizing the tropes as well was a nice detail of him having listened to Sarah's interests prior. Any episode where Tobias is the antagonist and the boys have to take him out is a win in my book. Double points for including Sarah. Now before I get to the episode I know you're all waiting for, or you just skipped ahead to see, I want to go over Sarah's second to last major appearance in the show, season 5, episode 12, The Potato. Because Darwin has been going ham on the spuds lately, he thinks he's offended Idaho the Potato. That's like eating salads in front of Leslie, or offering Penny trail mix. Highly insensitive. I'm proud of Darwin for trying to quit potatoes cold turkey, but damn, couldn't be me. Potatoes are the most versatile food of deliciousness. Potato salads, hash browns, french fries, nigga scallops. He is stronger than me, I'll say. And since she's been in the background since the literal start of the episode, Sarah throws her ice cream cone in the ring to help Darwin, offering a group therapy session with Mr. Smalls. See guys, she gets counseling for her obsessive nature. My girl has improved her art skills and is taking care of her mental health. Let's go. But unfortunately, Smalls is a hypocrite and pushes Darwin over the edge, eating a potato that gave him a musical realization of the true horrors he causes by the simple act of enjoying a starchy snack. So while Darwin isolates himself to battle his potato cravings, Idaho goes to visit him to set the record straight, a recipe for disaster that Sarah tried explaining to Gumball at least 3 times before he understood the steak fries of the situation. But turns out that Idaho was only upset with Gumball's awful nickname for him, Bro-tato. I don't know, it's kind of clever and kind of cute, I like it. But to each their own. No potato skins off my back. Sarah's involvement in the episode was small but entertaining nonetheless, offering her help in the most casual way possible. No tropes, no cliches, even offering a therapy session to help Darwin, showcasing she can put a lid on her obsessive media behavior the more she interacts with friends, especially if they're in need of help. Sarah has been improving her social skills and desires for Gumball's idiotic shenanigans she once craved to be so desperately a part of. But now she is on these adventures organically, instead of forcing her way into the plot like she used to. But I fear that her progress gets misinterpreted as taking an extreme nosedive for the next and final time we see her having a major role in an episode for the rest of the series. Season 6, Episode 14, The Shippening. While the awesome store was getting chased down by the cops, a notebook with the CN logo drops out of it and in front of Sarah. Thinking nothing of it, Sarah starts writing a couple of fanfics, one-shots, OOOCs, and ships in the notebook. But unbeknownst to her, it's affecting the actual canon of Elmore. Gumball and Darwin recognizes Sarah's handiwork and confronts her to undo the stories, but with the police right at her door for the notebook, she struggles with writer's block. Now I know the biggest turnoff when it came to Sarah this episode was her overabundance of shipping the real people of her own town with others, even infringing on others' marriages to do it. But something people tend to forget when it comes to Sarah's cringe behavior, she's a young, possibly autistic in my headcanon, middle school girl, of course she's gonna have some of the cringiest ideas of romance and fanfics. At least Sarah practices her most depraved fangirl moments in the safety and privacy of her own home. Privacy for her, safety from others. Aside from shipping herself with Gumball and Darwin, which is a whole different issue in and of itself, Sarah doesn't force her ships onto the people of Elmore. Also, something important to note, Sarah didn't mean for her writings to change the canon of their world, despite how happy she looked seeing it become actualized. Now look, any fan would be jumping for joy at a chance of their fanfic or even a headcanon to become actualized in the piece of media they've been obsessed with. So I don't fault her for that, mainly because she was more than willing to help set things right. She was just struggling with writer's block plus the pressure of the cops at the door. In an attempt to right her wrongs, Gumball and Darwin make a bigger mess of things, reinforcing the importance of grammar and writing. Just before the cops could break down the door, Sarah, with little space left on the notebook, was able to restore Elmore's chaos, and even though she fixed everything, I don't condone her cheeky method of getting the boys to kiss her to do it. I'll give her a week with no manga for that one. Yes, this episode was uncomfortable and cringe, but be real, when we were young, we too had awfully cliched writings of our faves and even questionable shipping, along with obvious edited OCs. Come on, Sonic fans. Recoloring Sonic and adding Spike's stripes and giving him a bleeding edgelord name doesn't ring a bell? Come on. Looking at you too, MLP fans! Those pony generators were just using the base models. I know about your OP alicorn OCs. Don't hide it, don't deny it, embrace it. Sarah perfectly represents that time in every young weeb's life when they were heavily and unapologetically into fanfic, shipping, and self-inserting OCs, but she had no one to share them with until meeting Gumball and Darwin and making new friends at Elmore. She's a deviant autistic-coded middle schooler with a hint of Tumblr girl. She truly is cringe, but at that age, who wasn't? And just having harmless fun while doing so. And as cringe as all of Sarah's writing was, it was a little funny that they were taking the phrases literally and making meta jokes of pressuring writers to always pop out gold. So let those without cringe cast the first Tamagotchi. I don't think this episode completely ruins Sarah's character, because when you think about all of the other episodes I've discussed, this was the first time she got to kick off an episode without Gumball and Darwin presented until later. We got to see Sarah in her natural habitat as the shut-in otaku that she is, writing fanfic and shipping the very real people of her town, which, of course, is not okay to do. Shipping fictional characters is fine, but real people are always off the table for me. But at least that aspect of her obsessive behavior, she keeps to herself. And in the past few episodes, she has shown to do a better job of separating fiction from her reality. Even if her reality is fiction, but you know what I mean. My point being, Sarah has been improving socially since befriending Gumball and Darwin. She's even on the cheer team and probably made even more friends that like having her around. But at the same time, she's fully aware of how off-putting her more unique habits can be to others. So she keeps those aspects to herself, which sounds very real to me. I don't think for a second that someone shows up as their full selves, just the selves they need to be at that given moment depending on the situation. You wouldn't be discussing your favorite anime with your parents the same way you would with your friends, would you? It's a matter of presentation and being comfortable to share your interests around people differently. And as an autistic person, it sounds a lot like masking to me. For neurotypicals, masking is basically putting up different facades or withholding back autistic traits in an effort to quote-unquote blend in. For some autistic people, it can be exhausting to constantly hide who you are, because deep down, you know that most people won't accept or even tolerate your more unique traits, let alone bother to give you the grace of patience to help you understand what you may have done to upset them. Autistic people have been often misunderstood as rude due to our more direct and blunt approach to life, or childish with the different ways we stem or express our excitement over our hyperfixations and special interests, when in reality, we just perceive the world differently due to sensory sensitivities, and navigating a social minefield on a daily basis can take a great toll on us. So when I see a character like Sarah, who gets in an abundance of hate for just being herself, not even acknowledging her personal growth and improvement, it makes me very upset. This may very well be me projecting, since I too was raised on TV, had a small group of friends, and made sense of the world using what media has taught me. Much like Sarah, I too was seeking to live that ideal TV show lifestyle, the quirky friends, possible love interests next door, and having crazy adventures that end with a moment on the couch. Sarah was seeking those adventures and friendships with Gumball and Darwin, especially because, according to her locker, they were the first kids to offer her kindness. And a TV trope's brain rot kid like her would latch on the supposedly cool kids of the school and hope to form a lifelong friendship. And maybe, potentially, they would fight over her hand in marriage. Speaking as once a little girl, I won't lie, the idea of guys fighting over me was exciting and would have done wonders for a child's self-esteem. Sarah can be creepy and invasive because she's never had any real friendships or romantic relationships. She's a girl raised by TV, possibly neglected by her own parents that we never met or see throughout the entire series, but she clearly was never taught to respect or even understand boundaries until meeting Gumball and Darwin. I thought it was clever how Sarah orchestrated the events of the fan as if she was a guest writer on her own episode. You can tell from her illustrations that Sarah's art is heavily influenced by early girly weeb art styles, the misproportions of anatomy, the giant eyes, the expressions, as well as the sparkly effects that surround them to indicate protagonist-kun. Even sweeter was when the boys, now having realized who Sarah really is, started playing along to cheer her up. Though she didn't want to force them to, crying in contentment that her life isn't a TV show and doesn't follow certain story beats to know what to expect next, with an episodic nature. Again, speaking for myself as an autistic person, and I recognize my bias with this, having an episodic life would be much more preferable because there's certain patterns of what's the expected outcome of the episode. And for that, I've grown fond of Sarah and better understand her as a character. It certainly doesn't excuse the weird shit she does, but explain where it stems from, and she's working on it. But I also understand why people take issue with her. But that issue largely stems from one episode. She left a bad impression on her last episode, unfortunately. But even then, she recognized it was wrong and helped fix everything. I'm still not letting her off the hook with making Gumball and Darwin kiss her for no reason aside from wanting to live a bit of her own fantasy. But other than that, Sarah is a harmless child. A child who goes to counseling and is improving her social skills amongst her peers as well as her art skills. And hopefully she'll grow into a semi-well-adjusted adult. I don't think Sarah G. Lato is as bad as people make her out to be. She's a middle school weeb with severe social issues, but who wasn't at that time in our lives, huh? Real life is boring, so escaping to a mental fantasy is the closest thing we have without a visit from Truck-kun. I don't condone Sarah's stalker behavior, but you can't deny that she was showing improvement and growth in the past few episodes. She's the same ice cream girl as she first started, but with a different flavor.